When I turned 19, I moved out of my mom's house and got a house of my own with a few of my friends. As we were young and relatively indigent, the only area we could afford to live was in a less than reputable neighborhood, and our house itself was at the end of a one-way street, just shy of being directly under a freeway overpass. Though the neighborhood itself was pretty shady, the people on our block welcomed us and were wonderful. I attribute their kindness to being invited to our parties, which were admittedly pretty huge. I mean, we were 19 to 21-year-old guys with our own house. What else were we going to use it for? Considering all of our money went to rent, cigarettes, and booze, none of us had cars. This meant a lot of bus taking, ride finding, and the least favorite of all, walking. There was a 24-hour convenience store, which was something pretty rare in a neighborhood with a reputation such as the one ours had, and that store was about 3 blocks from our house. To get there quickly, all we had to do was cross under the overpass, where there was really nothing but a large plot of dirt and dead grass. For the first few months we lived there, we simply never had to go to the convenience store at night. We would subconsciously make sure we had everything we needed by the time the liquor stores closed, which was 9 p.m. Then one night, I ran out of cigarettes. Knowing my roommates wouldn't let me ravage their own packs, I decided I needed to go to the store. I asked if anyone wanted to come with me, which of course they didn't. This was at around midnight. As I made my way through the dark, quiet field under the freeway, I got the sudden feeling that someone was under there with me. My thoughts first pointed towards a vagrant, as they were rampant around this part of the city. Knowing that they were generally harmless quelled my concern, though. I made my way to the store, and I was on my way back. I entered from the other side of the underpass, heading back towards my house when I saw something run across the dirt field. The strange thing was that I couldn't tell if it was a person or an animal. It was as tall as a human, but far too skinny, and from the brief glimpse I got of it, it looked to me like it was running on 2 legs. As it passed, I stopped in my tracks, truly unsure of what it was. Eventually, I took a few more steps forward, and again, whatever it was moved past me in a blur, this time heading in the opposite direction. I stopped again, not sure of what my next move should be. I must have stood there for 5 minutes, the silence that filled the empty area under the overpass engulfing me. I finally snapped out of it and took another few steps forward. Just then, the thing darted about 30 feet in front of me and stopped, perfectly illuminated by a ray of moonlight coming between the break and the overpass. I'm going to do my best to describe it. It stood probably 7 feet tall and had thin, spindly legs that were far too long to be that of a human. Its torso looked malnourished, as its ribs were protruding from within its pale skin. Since I was a bit too far away, I couldn't see the features of its face, but I could tell that it was much longer than it should have been, and I saw a black hole taking up the bottom of its face, which told me that its mouth was rather large. I couldn't make out a nose or the color of its eyes, but they were gleaming off the moonlight. From what I could tell, the thing had long, dark-colored hair that went down nearly half its back. I couldn't tell if it was male or female, as the dark didn't really allow me to. I was frozen in fear. This thing was just standing there, perfectly lit up by the bright, nearly full moon. It stood as still as a statue, its gleaming eyes seemingly staring through me. Then, without provocation, this thing changed positions. It arched one of its long legs at the knee, keeping the other one straight. It stuck both of its arms out to the side, leaving its wrists hanging down. It then let go control of its neck, and its head just hung there. Its top half looked like it was crucified, while its bottom half looked like it was posing for a photo shoot. It was extremely off-putting. I finally found the will to move and started running to my right. Before I knew it, I saw the silhouette of the thing in front of me. This time it was standing with its legs together, arms at its sides, stiff as a board, about 10 feet in front of me. Its eyes were wide open, like it was intentionally trying to get them as open as they could be. Now that I was closer, I could see that they were a bold, piercing green. I was again frozen. I didn't know what to do. Then I tried going left. It zoomed in front of me. I tried going right. It zoomed in front of me. Finally, I reached a perfect combination of fear and frustration, and I just yelled, "What do you want?" at the top of my lungs. At this point, the thing made the first sound I'd heard it make. It laughed. It wasn't a loud, outright, boisterous laugh or anything. The best way I can describe it is that its laugh sounded like Muttley from that old show Wacky Races. Look it up if you're not familiar. It's kind of like a scratchy kind of laugh. While it laughed like that, it raised and lowers its stiffened shoulders to, project itself a bit. I slowly backed away from it, and it didn't move. I kept my eyes on it for a good 10 seconds while moving away from it, and it didn't move. The moment I took my eyes off of it, it was in front of me again, this time in a different pose. I once again moved around it, making sure to keep my eyes on it while I moved. I was walking backwards and had my eyes on it, and I blinked. When my eyes opened from the blink, it wasn't there anymore. Then, I walked backwards right into it. It wrapped its long arms around me while laughing that horrible laugh. I felt its hot breath on the top of my head and on my neck, and I was overcome by its foul odor. It nearly made me vomit. I wrestled myself away from it and fell to the dirt ground, turning myself as I dropped so I would be facing it when I landed. It stood in the position it was in the moment I met eyes with it from the ground. I got up as quickly as I could and walked backwards as fast as I could, doing my best not to blink. I was almost to the point where the overpass stopped and the small area between it and my house began when my eyes couldn't handle it anymore, and I blinked. This time, though, I stopped walking backwards and spun around the moment I did blink, and again locked eyes with this creature. It stood there frozen as I gazed at it. It was in a position now where it was looming over me and had one arm up, with one very long and very sharp fingernail extended outwards, as if it were about to attack. I didn't waste any time and continued my backwards walk out of there. When I reached the point where I was no longer under the overpass, while I still had my eyes on it, it moved. It straightened itself out, then went stiff as a board once again, and did the thing where it laughed, shrugging its shoulders up and down as it did. Then, in a blur, it ran off to the left, out of my sight. I ran the rest of the short distance home backwards, keeping my eyes on the shadowy underpass. I told my roommates what had happened, and, of course, they didn't believe me. I moved out of the house and back to my mom's shortly after that. I wish my friends would have listened, because shortly after I moved out, I got a text from one of my friends late at night that read, "About to go to the corner store, hope we don't run into the monster," with a crying, laughing emoji. They were obviously being sarcastic. And they were never seen again.